I can ask questions all day long, but if I make all of the decisions, then we're not going to be able to grow. If I step out of the organization, it collapses. But if we've got an empowered team who learns from what questions I ask more than what decisions I've made, because they're the ones making the decisions, I think it's a lot more conducive to longevity.
Welcome to Multifamily Excellence, the podcast that explores the ever-evolving world of the multifamily industry. I'm your host, Jonathan Treble. In each episode, I'll spend time with a world-class multifamily leader to learn how they're continuously pushing boundaries for excellence. You'll get to hear their perspectives on career progression, leadership philosophies, and strategies for operational excellence. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Multifamily Excellence. This episode is brought to you by my company, With Me. With Me makes people's lives better every day through convenient technology-enabled solutions for the multifamily industry and beyond. Today, I am honored to welcome to the show someone whom I have a ton of respect for, an industry-revered leader of people who is respected widely by his employees, vendors, and operating partners alike. This person is David Danish, the Senior Vice President of Revenue, Marketing, and Strategic Initiatives at LivCor, a Blackstone Company. LivCor is one of the largest institutional asset managers of multifamily real estate in the country and in the world. David Danish, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. Your first episode and my first time as a guest.
On any podcast, right?
That's the truth.
All right. A lot of firsts here. Well, excited for that. And to share with the audience, the premise for my podcast is to dive deeply into the backgrounds and philosophies of leaders in the multifamily space. And with that, we will go all the way back to the start of your career, how you progressed in your career to where you are today, what you've learned along the way, and then advice that you would have for up and comers in our field. But first, to set the stage for the audience, can you tell us more about what you do at LivCor today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with LivCor about 3.5 years now, and really, really privileged that I've actually known of and worked with LivCor since their inception, basically, because of in my prior role, I was able to work with them as a consultant. They work, and I support three distinct teams: revenue, marketing, and strategic initiatives. So those three groups are responsible for all of our income, rental and non-rental income, and for generating demand across our portfolio. What I'm really responsible for, though, is not really our revenue management, our marketing, and our ancillary income, but for incorporating those teams into the greater asset management function, making sure that they partner really closely with our operating partners, with operations, and also representing the incredible work that they do and the accomplishments of that team with our executives and with our ownership of Blackstone.
Wow, very interesting. And I know that LivCor is unique in its scale, and we'll get into that later. But I can understand that there's a lot of moving parts at an organization like yours, and integrating those teams is very important. To give us a sense of the size, how big is your reporting organization today?
We have about 65 humans across the three teams.
Wow. And how many direct reports do you have?
Three. One for each: one revenue, one marketing, and one ancillary.
Makes sense. Great. So let's go back to your career journey, and let's go all the way back to college. Can you tell me and the audience, how did your college experience shape your career and or prepare you for the career you've had until now?
Yeah, actually, Jonathan, it's pretty funny. I have an older brother. He's 3 years ahead of me. We did a family adventure to search for universities for him. And I would sit around reading whatever materials they had in waiting rooms while he met with students or met with deans or whatever he was doing during those tours, and decided that an undergraduate business program was what I really wanted to chase after. Was actually in Wharton undergraduate program and loved it. Came into school thinking that I would concentrate in real estate. And after one class, decided not to. Graduate concentration in management and marketing. And it took a number of years to wind my way back to real estate. But I guess the call was always there. I don't think I knew about multifamily as a career or really understood it as an asset class very well prior to joining my first firm in the industry. and always thought of real estate as single family homes and commercial, and just really fell in love with multifamily. And after about 6 months in it, I think anybody who's there and thriving is pretty much there for life.
All right. It turns out we're both Wharton grads and can probably relate to that experience. And I would agree it was very helpful in setting a foundation. So let's talk about the first step in your career after Penn. I understand it was in executive compensation. Can you tell us
Yeah,
more about what led you there?
for sure. Well, gratefully, the advice of the MBA students. So, one of the advantages of the undergrad program there at Penn is that if you're in the undergraduate business classes, the same professors teach and often in the same class as the MBA students. So, you have this access to a cohort of people with more work experience, more life experience than you have. And, their tip was to be part of the core function of a group, the revenue side of the business, and to do something that I found really interesting and engaging. I think my summer internships during college had taught me that boredom was a real risk for me. I need to be stimulated. I need new and varied projects all the time. And I crave a high level of social interaction at work. And so when I realized that organizational behavior was my passion, that the management side of business was something that I found extremely compelling, doing it in a consulting environment was really attractive to me. But more importantly, the notion that there was a consulting firm who had a whole group dedicated to human resources was the most attractive thing. So I spent 4 years at Towers Perrin, loved with the people that I worked with there, still keep in touch with many of the people that I worked with there. I just wasn't passionate about the work. So great place, great people, great culture for an organization that taught me a lot of things that actually were far ahead of their time and are now much more common in the industry today in terms of how to manage teams, how to communicate, how to provide feedback to colleagues. So it was a tremendous learning opportunity. But there was also that moment when I woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to be doing this 15 years from now just because it's
Mm.
a lot of people worked really hard for me to get where I am, not just me, my parents, my grandparents, the parts of the family that emigrated with nothing from different parts of Central and Eastern Europe. And it felt like doing something because it was fine or it was safe or it was okay or it was the path I was on was a missed opportunity. And so really decided one morning that I had to pursue something else and tried to start applying for roles and other things that caught my attention and where I thought there were some cross applicable skills. And the rejection was fierce, Jonathan. So I had to come up with a new plan. How am I going to approach this to start anew on my career journey without throwing away everything that I've built in the 4 years that I was with Towers Perrin? And my sister, who gives me a lot of fantastic advice and has over the years, hopefully I'm reciprocating for her career. She suggested that I go travel, just clear my head and explore a little bit and open new neural pathways. And I booked a couple months in Central America and came home with a pretty strong desire to want to learn Spanish. I
Mm.
actually stopped working, gave up my apartment. My father generously let me co-opt space in the basement and attic so that I could head abroad. I bought a one-way ticket for Cuernavaca, Mexico, and moved down there. And P.S. I'd never been to Mexico before that, and I booked a month at a language school.
Wow.
And I told my family that I was going to either come back fluent in Spanish or come back having traveled the world and spending all my money. And 7 months in Cuernavaca, where I learned a ton. And honestly, I think I learned as much about life as I did about speaking Spanish during that time. So I'm thrilled that I still have Spanish and accessible today, and I'm reasonably fluent in it. But more importantly, I was extremely type A when I left New York. Pretty high anxiety person,
Mm.
moving at a really fast pace with a really competitive mindset, and that just doesn't work in Cuernavaca. If
Mm.
that's the way you manifest every day, you're going to be constantly frustrated by the cultural norms of the area. It really forces you to revisit those aspects of your personality. And for those of you listening who know me, you're like, he's still type A. True story. But probably went from one extreme to a slightly less extreme version of it. And I think that in and of itself has actually really served me throughout my career. That I took that edge off of that really high paced, really competitive notion that I'd incorporated from my university years and from that first career path because that was in New York City. So competitive firm, competitive clients, and a very competitive atmosphere. That needed to be refined for me to also find joy in the work.
How did you end up then at Nessel Development, which I believe was your first role in the real estate industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, you come out of that, you'd love to think that you had answers, but really just the course of things brought that to an end in and of its own way. And it wasn't because I'd figured out what I want to do. I'm not entirely sure that I know what I want to do when I grow up, but I'm a lot closer to that now than I was in 2005 when I came back from Latin America. And actually did a little bit of a stint at an English language school running the business side of their operation for a couple years, just searching out there. And a really weird and serendipitous course of events led me to multifamily and to my first job in real estate. And it's a funny coincidence. My stepmom, I'm very close. She was taking a walk with a cousin of hers, and he mentioned that he was having some trouble with his portfolio in Texas. He was a multifamily owner and operator based in California. And she mentioned to him that I'd always had an interest in real estate, that I was a great problem solver. And he was talking about how he knew real estate and could teach that to someone. He needed someone with the skills to manage people and problems. And my consulting background did a lot to teach that to me. And he said, well, I really need someone bilingual because our residents and some of our staff are Spanish. And she
Hmm.
chuckled and said, funny enough, David just spent about a year in Latin America and has that skill. So what else do you need? And he said, all right, let me talk to him, and rolled his eyes a little bit. And when he called me, it turns out he's a huge animal rights activist,
Hmm.
big supporter of lots of organizations that value the care of all creatures and cruelty-free living. And in the first 3 minutes, it came up that I'm a vegetarian. And I think I had the job at that point. I don't think the Wharton degree or my experience at Tara's Parent impressed him or anything about how I look at problems and problem solving. I think he was really sold on the cruelty-free life I'd led since I've been vegetarian from a very, very young. And 6 weeks later, I moved to Texas, another place that I had never been before. And quite frankly, more of a culture shock for me than moving to Mexico.
Wow. Yeah, very interesting path into multifamily. And so many people say they kind of stumble into multifamily, right? It's not when you're a kid growing up, it's not like, oh, I want to be in real estate in multifamily particularly. Although there are some like that. But that's incredible. So your Spanish helped you, being a vegetarian helped you. It's yeah. Wow.
So arrived, we had 2 buildings in Texas. We had 5 in Cleveland. David had never worked in multifamily before, and it was trial by fire for sure. I got there, I lived on site in the model unit, no less. So every
Wow.
morning had to be out of my unit before the office opened, and it had to look immaculate. Every water feature had to be turned on, every light had to be on, the music had to be playing, and any
Wow.
personal effects had to be away. So that was an interesting part of the experience for sure. Started on a Monday, and we terminated the fee management company by Friday. As I
Wow.
was reporting back to the owner, he was immediately pretty dissatisfied with the way his portfolio was being run and how it was representing him and his brand. So he flew down over the weekend, and we spent the next couple weeks along with the community manager who stayed. Of the 2 communities in Texas, one stayed, and she became my professor, and he became my professor. And then the software firm that we leveraged across our portfolio also became one of my professors. And from those 3 tools, it was now just work, work, work until you figured out enough of the fundamentals of this business to have a positive impact on the organization and to make sure that your residents and the physical aspects of the community were being taken care of. And that it was an exciting time. Looking back on it, it feels like it was a lot of fun. I'd moved to Texas and basically knew nobody there. And so it wasn't a big I wasn't giving up any personal time or time with
Hmm.
my friends or family
Mm.
to do that work. So it was a really hard 3 months in terms of the work, but it was extremely valuable. I learned a tremendous amount during that time and started to build relationships. And it's been invaluable in my career ever since that I had that hands-on experience operating the properties.
And after you terminated the relationship with the operating partner, did you bring everything in house at this firm, or did you find another operating partner?
We did. So we had everything in house except for accounting. We did all managed our own operating system, managed utilities all ourselves. Everything was in house for both Cleveland and Dallas, where we had our portfolio. With 5 properties, it's not a huge staff to manage.
Hmm.
had tremendous partnership from the owner's mother-in-law, whose title was Special Ops. She and I remain great friends today. She's the actual cousin of my stepmom, and she and I just figured things out. Whatever needed to get done, we figured out a way to do it. And on a portfolio at that scale, you could usually just figure.
Still incredible, right? To go Monday, you join Friday, no more operating partner, bring it all in house. That's a crucible,
Yeah, my
but
stomach's in knots just recalling it. I can't believe the risk that we took or the risk that he took on me. And
wow.
that's just one of many, many moments I think in my career when somebody who I really respected and who had already accomplished a lot of great things along the way demonstrated faith in me that I probably didn't even have in myself.
Right. And you stayed there for about 4 years. And then we all know you moved on to RealPage. Anything else about that experience at Nessel that shaped your career before moving over to RealPage?
Yeah, I think it was a really pivotal moment. I learned two things. One, very practical, very that still touches my day to day, which is that I love technology and love the user experience of property technology. And so my passion for prop tech probably started in that role. And I ended up being our super user for
Mm.
a lot of different products that we leveraged at the time. And I think that stuck with me because it seemed like something different that I could bring to the table relative to those around me. There were a lot of people around me with really good work ethic, and everyone around me knew multifamily better than I did. Even our leasing
Mhm.
specialists had deeper and longer experience in the industry than I'd had at that point and knew tons more about multifamily than I did. But I could learn software pretty quickly, embraced it, and for some reason the instructors that I'd had along the way at RealPage and I really built relationships. I'm actually still friends with the train the trainer instructor. So shout out to you, Emily, from all those years ago. And those relationships were some of the first that I started to build in the industry. So that was number one. I think the less practical, the less day to day, but has still shaped my career every minute since then, was learning to just think about what were we delivering. And I think the decision to leave that company was that what the owner envisioned and wanted to execute for the portfolio and what I thought was possible to sustain and how that reflected relative to what we could deliver to our residents were not aligned. And, I wanted to find a way to do better and to do more and work in an environment where what I felt was possible, something that everyone in the organization was working to achieve. And, he was working within certain business realities. I have tremendous respect for that. His career certainly speaks for itself. And we've also stayed in touch, and that's great. But there was definitely a time where I thought the portfolio was probably a little bit more sizzle and a little bit less state than I would want
Mm.
to residents along the way. And honestly, that it's great that that drove me to RealPage. My group there had a lot of people who'd found that their value system and value system of the ownership group they worked for weren't aligned, and it's part of what led them to form such a fantastic group with such a high level of commitment to residents and to clients. And then the same is true with where I work today. And working with that part of our value system being able to manifest itself in what we do every day has been forever now ingrained in me as an important part our business. We just work too many hours each day and we're spending too much time with our coworkers to not feel like we're in sync in terms of what's important to us and what we're working toward.
Really interesting because David, you had such an incredible experience at Nessel and you did something that I find to be so rare is you then switched over to the vendor side and you succeeded to an incredible degree starting at RealPage as what I believe was an individual contributor role and working your way all the way up to VP of asset optimization, I believe. Can you tell me in the audience what was it about your role at RealPage that you loved and helped you learn more about your own passions in your career?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. It was strange to start as a Yield Star advisor after being the VP of operations for the firm for so long. But I think it was really worthwhile for me to start this new journey where I was in an environment where I could learn from my peers again instead of having to just figure things out. I knew that other people had figured out a lot of this stuff in multifamily and was really craving an opportunity to learn from those experts and sort of accelerate my learning development professionally. And in addition to that, it became this really neat cocktail of my consulting experience, where really was focused on listening and focused on problem solving, putting systems in place to create better performance over time, with that on-site experience I had and understanding the realities day to day of what it's like to be resident facing and prospect facing, mixed in with that having been the owner's right hand, taught me a lot of the skills and perspectives that an asset manager needs. And they were a vital part of that client experience as well. So I think those three things came together to create this perfect cocktail of experience for me to thrive in the role of revenue manager at RealPage. And it was fantastic. I loved it. I loved working with our clients, especially. And every time the experience started to become familiar or feel like it was going to be a little bit less shiny and new than it had been before, something would come along to spark my interest once again. In the early days there, we provided performance reviews quarterly, and just seeing how my clients performed and feeling a lot of pride and having been a part of their outperformance where that was the case really drove me for a little while. And then, if the work became familiar, there was always a new opportunity. We entered Canada and had to learn new markets, new regulations, figure out how to help the software evolve to be effective in that market, and how to help our processes evolve to work with that employee population who'd been used to a very different set of experiences than those that we assumed were in place across our US partners. And as varied as those experiences were from market to market and company to company in the US, it was a completely different experience to then learn the Canadian markets, especially with such differences between Toronto and then the Western provinces, was really educational for me. Built some great relationships there as well. Loved crossing that border and tapping into my passion for other cultures and other humans and other perspectives. And then things again started to become a little bit familiar as we moved through that, and things got interesting when we released the benchmarking platform and one of the industry's earliest business intelligence platforms for multifamily. Having been a part of that and having serviced clients across the country with those new tools was extremely rewarding. The next thing that made things interesting was when it was time to enter the UK market, getting to travel over there with my boss at the time, Amy Dreyfus, who is one of the many mentors that's helped shaped me professionally in my time at RealPage, was just a really huge opportunity for me to again learn a new culture, but also a market that was in a completely different place. We really thought that the Canadian market was in a very different place in terms of adopting technology and adopting processes that have been successful for US investors, US operators, and US residents. But going over to the UK, it was a whole nother world. Build to rent was not a sector there. People putting up whole buildings to make them rental communities that were professionally managed and serviced was entirely new to their market. And so entering that space, working with owners to catch them up on what the possibilities were for the future, and talk to them about how to leverage data and analytics along the way to create the most optimal investment product for their investment groups, was a tremendous opportunity, and one that I found really, really rewarding. Again, the travel component, the cross-cultural exposure, and getting that professionally, where it had previously been, my personal time had exposed me to that, and it was my chosen adventures. But now that it was part of my work life, it's shed a whole new light on other cultures and other ways of thinking that I think have really helped me to keep my ideas fresh over the years. And so it just was one thing after another, kept the work interesting and challenging and engaging, to the point where going client side was never even in my mind, because it didn't seem that anybody else could create an environment that would give me as many new challenges to tackle and as many new experiences to have and new humans to meet as the work that I had been doing over there. And those were followed by then the acquisition of Axiometrics and me getting to work really closely with that team and the incredible humans that were a part of their organization. And then getting to work with the team at Rentlytics following that acquisition. So it really was a great seat to be in for a really long time. And I was working with really amazing people. And because of all the travel, all of the change, I built really solid relationships with the humans there as well. And just consider that a group of people that I probably had about a 7-year overlap with there to really be my people. And they'll always be my people. They feel like family. And in many cases, was there when they got married, was there when they had their kids, was a part of the experience when they bought their first home, or when they had their first manager role. And going through all of that with them really just built an incredible closeness and respect and fondness for those people that I certainly retain today. And I don't think I would have taken this role at LivCor if it didn't mean that I was going to play an active role in partnering with RealPage and those humans on an ongoing basis in order to support my existing responsibilities.
And let's talk about that transition because you did so well at RealPage. You built a family of colleagues around you that you still are very close with. What enticed you to move back over to the client side now at a much larger scale with LivCor?
Oh gosh, it was really one that I was approached by an industry colleague that I had tremendous respect for and got along with really well, who who was creating a new role that was too good to pass up, at least considering. Keith Dodds had transitioned from another organization over to LivCor. And after taking a step back and looking at the company before he began in all his role in earnest, he was given sort of this period of time to observe what did the organization need and bringing revenue and marketing together and having them walk more hand in hand and less side by side was one
Mhm.
of his initiatives. And when he talked about that to me and I heard his passion for it, I got pretty excited about it as well. Had always loved working with Keith. And so also the opportunity to work closely with him seemed enticing. But everyone that I knew at LivCor from my client relationship with them was somebody who I really respected, who I thought had accomplished tremendous things in their areas of expertise, but also in many regards for the industry. And it was humbling to be considered someone worthy of being a part of that set. You know, the reputation of the organization certainly precedes itself. From day one, it was always set up to have so many of the best and brightest people in our industry, and also people who shared, my commitment to making data-driven decisions along the way. That could we move past that what does your gut and experience tell you, but also let's constantly test those hypotheses or test those theories or test those beliefs and challenge them with data to make sure that they're still valid, that they're valid in all the environments and markets that we're working in and the asset lifecycle phases and asset classes, and make fewer and fewer assumptions and be more and more agile based on what you can do with the power of data and a really large data set that we're fortunate to have at LivCor because of the size of our portfolio.
Tell me more about how you built the culture of your teams, your 3 teams that roll into you. Because I've heard from people on those teams, they love working at LivCor, they love working under your leadership, and I I also know LivCor has a great reputation. I'm sure, as you alluded to, it was a great place to work even before you joined, but you've been able to persist that and keep that great work culture that's both high performing and high engagement, which is a rare thing to be able to bring together. Tell me a little bit more about how you've built that culture where people love to work under your leadership and they're still incredibly high performing.
Yeah, well, that's one of the biggest compliments I think anybody can receive in their professional career is that people love working under their leadership. And I think a bunch of different things have contributed. There isn't one thing about my philosophy or what I do that I think contributes to that. I think it's probably a lot of little things, but maybe they could all be rolled up into recognizing that everybody comes to work in a different way and with different needs, passions, interests, objectives in mind, motivations. And I think learning that and recognizing it and trying to create a culture that will resonate with the kind of humans who will be successful in that environment. So both not trying to be all things to all people all the time, but at the same time respecting that everybody on the team is an individual in some way, shape, or form. That conclusion, I think, is really what drives the culture on our team. So we all come to work every day, of course, with passion for performance. We're all pretty driven and wanting to see the portfolio succeed and wanting to create great resident experiences. But also on my team, really, because we don't interact directly with the residents, there's a lot of wanting to create really great experiences for our colleagues. We really see ourselves as a service organization for the asset management team, for the operations team, for the executives to execute on what the vision is for this portfolio. And so I think that's a big part of it. But I think what people really enjoy is that it is care first. It is our humans first. I it's it's little things like remembering who probably takes a break for dinner so that they can eat with their family, but will be back online later, and not worrying about the fact that you didn't hear from them or couldn't reach them at exactly 6 o'clock if that's when you tried to reach them.
Mhm.
It's little things like remembering that people on the West Coast, if you're based in the central time zone, probably can't join an 8 a.m. call without disrupting their day a little bit.
Mhm.
And, showing that level of basic respect for the fact that people are whole humans and not machines that come to work for you every day, I think that goes a really long way. But in terms of like leadership philosophy, for me, you can't succeed if you don't do a couple of things. One, I always try to hire people that I view as smarter than myself. Most of the people that I've hired since I joined LivCor came in with greater expertise in their area than what I possess. I think that's a tremendous asset. And I really try to treat all of them like colleagues who just have a different set of responsibilities. Even in an organization that does have a hierarchy on paper, you can make it feel very non-hierarchical by respecting other people's ideas, by asking questions, and by empowering them to make decisions for their team. I can ask questions all day long, but if I make all of the decisions, then we're not going to be able to grow. And if I step out of the organization, it collapses. But if we've got an empowered team who learns from what questions I ask more than what decisions I've made, because they're the ones making the decisions, I think it's a lot more conducive to longevity. It's conducive to consistent outperformance. And hopefully it attracts and retains people who share my interest, my passion for delivering on the organization's mission. I think empowering the team is a really big part of it. At the start, I'm probably pretty detail oriented. I focus a lot on people's onboarding, making sure that they've got exposure to all the right humans and relationships and skills that they need to be successful. But over time, that's not that proximity that I'm going to feel to their work every day has to wane, or else we can't grow, or else it's not scalable, or I won't be able to reach the next level of my career professionally. And so, really empowering people to be successful, showing them how much I trust them and value them. That's been a huge part of it at every step of the way.
You're clearly doing a lot of things right, David. And a lot of the things you're saying, empowerment, leading by asking questions, onboarding so well, these are, I think, staples in great leadership. How did you learn how to become a great leader? Did you learn more through the example of leaders before you, through reading, through coaching, training, classes? What's
Yeah.
your learning
I,
history?
I think I think it's been a mix, and it probably changed at every phase of my career. I think when I was in my 20s and I still believed I knew everything, I learned a lot from how not to lead from the leaders that I had in that time. What were they doing wrong? What did I find frustrating? And promising myself that I wouldn't mirror those behaviors or inflict those behaviors on other humans. So being iconoclastic in that regard from the leaders that I worked with in early days, not to say that they were bad leaders, but everybody has behaviors that resonate with you or don't resonate with
Mhm.
you. And so really picking up on those that didn't resonate with me and doing the opposite, it
Mhm.
was probably the start. Then I found leaders who I was able to focus more on when I was in my 30s, really focused more on what were they doing that was really successful.
Mhm.
And I think one thing that I learned from leadership at RealPage is this concept of the plus two hire. Such a big part of how much success we're going to find in life is dependent on our ability to find the right people to round out our team. And so to look at every prospective new hire through the lens of, do I believe after this interview that they could get not one but two promotions here and still be successful in those roles over time? That was a really great lens through which to view future hires. And I think it has served me incredibly well since then. There was a period we were growing so rapidly at LivCor that I honestly believed if I could just continue to find and retain the great talent that we built up at LivCor as we scaled, that I was going to be very successful here
Mhm.
because it was so important to the organization's growth and such a big part of my role and responsibility. I think another thing that has served me really, really well is I don't think about what's next for me in terms of a promotion. I think about what am I responsible for today and how can I be more successful at that? And if you commit yourself to that and you create real change around you and you consistently develop performance and you do it in a way that leaves people feeling good, those opportunities are going to come.
Mm.
Every promotion that I've had in my professional career has really it probably came before I was ready for it emotionally, before I was even interested in getting it. I can only ever even remember asking for one once in 23 years. And I think that pursuing the company's objective and being, working to shine at what you're doing is going to speak for itself. So I never chased a title or a new role. I was always chasing just excellence at the thing that I was tasked with doing. And sometimes looking beyond those lines and trying to think, how can I help make this whole organization better? And, opportunity will knock at that point. It's basically like sending out invitations for opportunity to come over every time you touch the organization that way.
Let's transition to advice for our listeners who are earlier in their careers who would love to achieve the success that you have achieved. What would you advise to those up and comers who would someday love to be an SVP in multifamily?
Yeah. Well, one, and I've told a lot of people on my own team this very recently, and so I think it's a good one that resonates in the moment is find your own brand of leadership. It doesn't have to look or feel a
Mhm,
certain way. So, for example, I'm an extrovert. I love to meet new people. I love engaging with the whole team. And even as the team has grown, I think the largest group I've ever been supporting was about 150 humans. It's not uncomfortable for me to speak in front of that group, to present, to bring the energy every day to every call. But there are a lot of people who have different personality types, and I don't think you have to mirror or have mine to be
mhm,
successful. So I think regardless of how much of that you may see visibly in leadership today,
mhm,
just know that it comes in every form. And I think the real art to becoming a successful leader is probably trying to find that match of your brand and the way it can be leveraged in leadership.
mhm,
So if you're a little bit more quiet, if you're a behind the scenes worker, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve professionally, working behind the scenes and propping other people up in a very different way from the cheerleader personality or the high energy leader that you see in front of you. And I
mhm,
think just because they're working in a different way, we don't see those examples as much. But if you marry your natural personality and you view those things as strengths, not as weaknesses or areas for development, you can figure out how they can be leveraged into a leadership role in the future and into your success. So I think that's probably one of the most critical things is don't think that it has to look, act, speak a certain way in order to be leadership material. Another thing that I think really, really resonates is don't chase, like I said earlier, don't chase that promotion or that title. Chase the things that you value. And so like when I switched jobs from Nessel Development to RealPage, I was chasing learning opportunities. I was chasing a culture whose value system aligned with mine more closely.
mhm,
When I switched over to LivCor, I was chasing an environment that fostered innovation very intelligently and very intentionally. And, was really thinking about these things that I value in my professional world every day rather than what's the title or what's the role or what's the promotion level. And I think that has really led me to not success in terms of the title and the monetary compensation and other tangible rewards we get from the role, but it's led to success in that we're all going to really work hard. It's much less of an obligation to do that work if you're chasing the things that are important to you personally. And that's what gives you the endurance to have a career that spans time, spans organizations, spans hopefully the whole industry. And it's also where you find the strength to then support the other humans around you. I wouldn't have the energy to support 65 people every day if I didn't really value each and every one of them and what they're doing. And I think that human first cultural aspect of where I work today, because it resonates with me so much personally, is definitely one of the things that motivates me professionally. And so I think chase those values and the professional rewards will come.
That's great advice. That's always worked for me as well. David, you also mentioned in the pre-show communication that we had that being a minority in leadership has given you a unique lens that has helped you in your career. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that I really get asked about very often or talked about. And let's just be honest, as a white cisgender male in my 40s, on paper, I don't think that people immediately would associate me with being a minority in multifamily leadership. But it does shape your lens every day to bring yourself to work. And the more you're in an environment where you can be all the attributes of yourself and not just those that you think resonate professionally in your specific organization, I think the more you're going to thrive both personally and professionally. And so, it meant something the first time that I came out at work as a gay man. And to feel the freedom and confidence to do that because of the humans that were around me at my organization, it was really empowering, really validating that there was nothing about the organization perspective on what made me different and unique that was going to be detrimental to my professional career. But it did mean I had to think about who else I was working with and how to show up every day. And I think it'd be a lie if I said that from day one at RealPage, I could show up 100% as myself every day. And that's not a knock on RealPage or any of my colleagues there. It's just culturally in that time and in that place, you sort of had to make adaptations around yourself to accomplish what you needed to accomplish. When you're in leadership, you're not the individual contributor who's the doer who can touch on and complete every task perhaps by themselves. You're really an influencer. You're influencing others to get the work done, and whether that means motivating them, teaching them, empowering them, or tapping into their subject matter expertise. You can't do that if they don't respect you, and you can't do that if your existence doesn't get the same recognition from them that the existence of others gets. And so certainly that informed my behaviors for a long time. And within that organization, I adapted to be the kind of leader that I thought would resonate with them more clearly. And moving over to LivCor, I found that subconsciously I had been not bringing a lot of myself to work every day. And that this was an organization that not only was accepting of my differences, and one of my pet peeves as a person in the LGBTQ community is that tolerance is the word used so often to describe how we should relate to people's differences. Well, I don't want to be tolerated, and I don't know if you want to be tolerated, Jonathan. Tolerating, it sounds like a thing you do for an annoying dog that's misbehaving at a friend's house. But you want to visit with that friend. And that's not how I want to be treated as a human. And I don't think that's how any of the humans on my team want to be treated. So to step into a role and an environment and to work with leaders who made it okay every day and who not only told me that it was great, but celebrated those differences every day, just allowed me to start coming to work as myself in a way that I'd never been able to before. And it's not about tolerance or acceptance. It's about embracing, it's about respecting, and it's about loving those differences and those unique things about us. And, I think the same can be said for coming to work every day as a Jewish man. I've worked in a lot of places where anti-Semitism is present. I've worked in a lot of places where people weren't familiar with or knew many Jewish people, or where lots of greetings, holidays, celebrations, observances around an organization really revolve around the majority of that population who believes in and practices a Christian tradition. And while their traditions are beautiful, it can leave others feeling excluded and feeling like other, leaving out that I in diversity, equity, and inclusion, to not acknowledge their holidays, their faith traditions, the value system that allows them to bring to work every day. And really thinking about these things and these experiences, I think, has given me a lens by which to learn so much from the diversity of colleagues that I have at LivCor every day, and to respect them in a whole different way, to learn about what allyship is, and to be able to speak to it in a way that I think really stresses for the whole organization that the role of inclusion in that DEI three-letter goldmine is everybody's responsibility. It's not a thing that leadership does or that your HR team does. It's a thing that every one of us can be a part of every day when we come to work.
I'm sure a big reason why you're so successful, David, is you bring your authentic self and you are inspiring to others to do the same. So kudos for your enlightened view on leadership and doing that day in and day out. So David, last question, where can people learn more about LivCor? And if they do want to work for you as a leader, where would you point them?
I think if they want to work for me as a leader, they should probably talk to somebody who works for me today and make sure they know what they're getting into. But if they still want to do that, they should definitely check out livcor.com. Really proud of our website and how it conveys so much about the personality of our organization and what makes it a unique place to work. Admittedly, it's not for everybody. I have great friends, great industry colleagues that I don't think would be happy at at LivCor as an organization. It's extremely fast paced. Change is
Mm.
definitely our only constant at the organization, but it is a fantastic environment for the people that we have here today. And would welcome your interest, welcome the conversation if you want to reach out and just talk a little bit about what resonates here with me and see if it's something that's right for you as well.
All right. Well, David, thanks again for joining today. I really appreciate you spending time with us. It was great having you on the podcast.
Thanks for the invite, Jonathan. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Multifamily Excellence, brought to you by With Me. With Me is making lives better every day through convenient, technology-enabled amenities for the multifamily industry and beyond. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.